What is going on, y'all? It's your boy Knowledge, 7-figure entrepreneur, been in the notary space for going on 10 years. I want to talk to you guys today about how the notary business changed my life after the 9-to-5 and after making millions in the notary business, making multiple days where I've had 10K plus in revenue, and I've showed other people how to make success in the business. I know that I'm more than qualified to show you guys a little bit back of my story so you can see how everything worked out for me and how everything came into fruition. So thinking back, if I take everything back, when I first started off in the notary business, my intentions wasn't to make millions. My intentions was just to get out of a state of poverty, I would say. At that point, I just wanted to make some money, right? And I wanted to make money in the sense that my biggest things was making sure I could pay rent and making sure that there was food on my table every day. So when I get into the notary business, it wasn't about making a whole bunch of money, but it just happened as time went on. So what happened is the very last job I had, there was two last jobs. One was working in my field, doing in computer science. And then after that, there was the job where I was working desk at some property management firm. After I finished that, I made a promise to myself that, look, you're gonna figure out how to work for yourself because just working a job wasn't for me. So when I actually left that last job and I made that promise to myself, I started looking at a whole bunch of different businesses and trying out different things after I graduated college. And at that time, my uncle actually said like, hey, you should try out the notary business. And for me, I'm like, the notary business, in my mind, it was like, okay, notaries make money. You make $5 here, $10 here, but you're not gonna really make that much money. So even when I did listen to him and I started doing the business, I didn't think it was gonna be something where I was just like, oh man, I'm making a whole bunch of money from this. I never thought about it like that. I didn't think it was gonna be something that I could actually be that successful from. So what ended up happening, at that point, I started doing the notary business, started making a little bit of money, and then I started to realize like, oh, this actually makes money. Sorry for the little horn down here if you guys can hear it. But I was like, oh wow, the notary business can actually make money. All I have to do is focus on it. So I started making a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, but it wasn't consistent to the point where I was just like, okay, this is gonna be the thing that pays my rent. When I realized that it wasn't gonna be the thing that can pay my rent because it wasn't making that much money, I then started to be like, all right, let me try other businesses. Let me try different things. So I did the same thing that many other entrepreneurs did. I tried a whole bunch of different businesses out. So that started to be the, oh, somebody's getting towed downstairs. So that started to be the Airbnb. I started to do the Turo. I started to do Amazon. I started to do a little bit of e-commerce. I was just trying a whole bunch of different things out. And then I realized like, hey, this thing isn't for me. I didn't think that those businesses were for me, but one of them ended up making money. But after mismanagement and losing that money, I ended up being into a point where I was making less money than I was before, and I had to change that. So when I actually started out these different businesses, I tried them out, and then I ended up hitting rock bottom, and then I came to a point where I was like, all right, you know what? Let me go ahead and go back to the business that actually made me money, and I know it's something that people need. And for me, that ended up being the notary business, right? So when I circled back to the notary business, I was like, okay, cool. This makes money. The only thing that I didn't like about it was the boringness of it, I would say. So like the stamping papers, the doing documents, doing stuff like that, I was just like, this is cool, but it just wasn't fun. But when I was down on my butt, I was like, all right, I have to do this. There's nothing else that I can do. But as time went on, I think the last appointment that I went to made me be like, okay, I have to change something. I have to do something different. So what ended up happening in that story is the last notary job that I went out myself and did, I had to drive to the location. I think it was like an hour and a half south. So I had to go to Miami. I did the notarization. And then at that point, I was just like, no, I didn't even do the notarization. I drove south. I went to the guy's penthouse, went upstairs, knocked on his door, knocked on his window. And then I realized, and then he texted me and said, hey, I don't need the service anymore. So when that happened, I was like, oh, hell no. Hell no. I drove an hour and a half down and an hour and a half back with absolutely no pay. At that point, I was just like, all right, you know what? Cool, this is not for me. I'm not doing this anymore. I need to find a way to make money because this guy wasted my time. That was 3 hours of my life that I'll never be able to get back. So when I went back home, I think a couple of days later, something happened to where, a couple of days passed, and then I had a new client that called me, and they needed a notarization that was done in Tallahassee or Gainesville. So when they called, they're like, hey, I need this notarization done. I'm located in blah, 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 Tallahassee. I was like, okay, cool. I'll go ahead and do that notarization. But in the back of my mind, I was like, damn, I know damn well I'm not about to drive to that location. So I thought about it. I'm like, all right, if I want to step away from the notary business in the sense that I don't want to be the person that's doing the notarizations, then what I'm gonna do is let me go ahead and start testing it out. Let me start seeing what I can actually do to where I don't actually have to be the ones doing the appointment. So I ended up calling my friend that was in Tallahassee or Gainesville at that point. And then what ended up happening is he said, yeah, I can do the notarization, no problem. So in my mind, I was like, all right, cool. I don't have to do the notarization myself. He's gonna go ahead and do it. And I'll just keep some of the money. He ended up going to the location, doing it, calling me after. He's like, hey, knowledge, everything is good. Appointment was smooth. And I was like, all right, perfect. Give me a second. I'm gonna call the client. Call the client. The client said the appointment was smooth too. Client enjoyed it. And I was like, all right, bet, cool. Everything looks good. And then at that point, I went back in my room. I sat down and I was like, wow, I just made like $60 profit without leaving the house. The most I did was call the client, call the notary, and maybe client acquisition, things to get the client coming in. That's it. Outside of that, I didn't really do much of anything else. So I was like, okay, if I can make $60 profit, not leaving the house with 5 minutes of work, imagine what I can get done with having more people working on the team and putting more energy into it. So then I started focusing on that and I'm like, all right, this can actually be done. So what ended up happening is I started focusing on the business more and coming up with different strategies on how to bring more and more clients in. And then it just started taking off from there. I remember I got to the point where it was 1 December and I think we made like $40,000 a month or something like that. I think it was $40,000 and it was December. I know that for a fact. But I remember once we hit that number and it was the end of the year, I knew at that point, I'm like, you know what? I can make millions out of this business. Because I was like, if I can get to this amount, I was like, if I can get to 40,000, I know I can get to 100,000. And if I can get to 83,333 and 33 cents repeating, I know I can get to $1 million a year, because that's all you need to make $1 million a year. You just need just round it up. You only need $84,000 a month to make $1 million a year. And I knew that. So I was like, okay, cool. Now I know I can do it. So at that point, that's where things changed. So then as life has just happened and started, like as life was happening and I just learned more in the business, I just started making more and more. And then my life just started to change. Like different things happened. So for example, just able to pay off bills, pay off any type of loans that I have, pay off any type of car that I have, move and live in Miami, which is where I am now. Now I'm about to just travel the world and live in a different country every 1 to 3 months. Like life is changing now. And it all came from stamping papers. It all came from just being a notary. And that's really it. You know what I'm saying? It's being a notary and then having some experience from my other businesses where I was like, all right, you know what? Let me try these little e-commerce tactics out, and then realizing like, okay, I can make more money. So everything just changed. Everything changed after I left the business, after I left the 9 to 5, and then I actually started focusing on the business to take it to the next level. That's why I'm like, all right, my life is starting to change. So I think a lot of notaries out there, what they don't understand is that even the best case scenario, even working for yourself as a notary, the best case scenario for you guys being a solo operator is what I call it, is you'll drive appointment to appointment to appointment to appointment. But the thing is, even best case scenario, if you get booked all day, you're still trading your time for money. No matter what you do, you're trading your time for money in the sense that you have to drive and do these appointments. And then some people are saying like, what if I do online notarizations? Well, those companies are only paying $5 to $10. So you're not really making any real substantial money. And if you're somebody out there that wants to do this like full time, it's not gonna happen like that. Realistically speaking, it's probably not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen to where you can just go out and you're gonna make millions just doing online notarizations, making $5 and $10 a stamp. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, especially when you're the one doing them. So I started to realize like, all right, there's different ways to make money in this industry. All I have to do is understand the structure, which is the biggest thing. Understand client acquisition, which is a big thing, and making sure that my system is smooth so that that way when clients are coming to the business and doing business with my company, they're enjoying the experience, they're getting a repeatable experience that they know every time they come back, and then my company is positioned in a way where larger corporations wants to work with us, and even celebrities. I can name some of the celebrities, you guys won't even believe me if I told you. It wouldn't even believe me if I told you. So that's what I'm saying. This business can work for you 100%. You just need to understand the structure behind the system. So if you're somebody that's making 5 to 10K or you want to make 5 to 10K in the notary business, click the link in the bio. It's 100% free training. Just click it, learn the information I'm teaching you. I'm going to break down the systems exactly on what I did in my business to end up growing it. And then I'll show you some real live numbers as well, because I know people always want to see the numbers. Go ahead and check that out. But yeah, I really think you guys should check it out because it helped me to the next level. And to be honest, I had to learn all of this stuff from scratch. And you guys are just getting a shortcut to all the stuff that I've learned and had to use a greater half of my 20s to understand this stuff on my own. But anyways, check it out. I think it'll help you guys out. It'll change somebody's life out there. But anyways, if you want to learn more, like I said, click the link in the bio. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification. And if you have any questions with the notary business or the signing service business at all, go ahead and ask me in the comments below. I'm 100% here to help you guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.